What if stepping into the ring wasn't just about victory, but about survival? What if your opponent wasn't just trying to win, but had a deadly secret hidden in his gloves? This isn't just a boxing match. This is betrayal, crime, and a fight that ended in tragedy. How far would someone go to steal a career, a life, and a legacy? Stay with us as we unravel one of the most shocking and disgraceful moments in boxing history. You won't believe how deep this scandal goes. Stay tuned, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking stories from the world of boxing. On June 16, 1983, Madison Square Garden became the stage for one of the darkest and most disgraceful moments in boxing history. Fans gathered full of excitement to witness a fight that would eventually shock the sport and change the lives of everyone involved. The undercard featured a match between Luis Resto and Billy Collins Jr., two fighters at very different stages in their careers. Billy Collins Jr., an undefeated 21-year-old American boxer, was widely expected to come out victorious, with hopes that a win would pave the way for a shot at a world title. On the other side was 28-year-old Luis Resto, a Puerto Rican journeyman whose career had been marred by numerous defeats. He had spent much of his time as a sparring partner and was desperately trying to revive his fortunes in the ring. This bout was the warm-up for the night's main event, a super welterweight title fight between Davey Moore and Roberto Duran, but it would soon overshadow everything else. As the fight unfolded, spectators were caught off guard by Resto's performance. For all 10 rounds, Resto displayed unexpected power and endurance, constantly punishing Collins with a flurry of punches. Although the fight seemed to be evenly matched in terms of tactics and technique, Collins' face told a very different story. His features were rapidly becoming unrecognizable, swollen and disfigured, with his eyes swelling shut. The extent of the damage was hard to comprehend, especially since Resto wasn't known for his knockout power. By the end of the 10th round, Collins had taken a severe beating, but Resto, looking surprisingly fresh, had sustained little to no damage. When the fight went to the judges, they unanimously declared Resto the victor, defying expectations and leaving the crowd in shock. A fighter with an unremarkable record had just upset a rising star, leaving Madison Square Garden awash in disbelief. But the celebration was short-lived. The scandal unfolds. Still inside the ring, moments after the final bell, Billy Collins Sr., a former boxer who now coached his son, approached Luis Resto to offer congratulations and shake his hand. What should have been a respectful gesture turned into the beginning of a scandal that would forever haunt the sport. As Collins Sr. grasped Resto's hand, he immediately sensed something was wrong. The gloves felt too light. Upon closer inspection, he realized the padding had been almost entirely removed, leaving the gloves unnaturally thin and making Resto's punches far more dangerous than they should have been. Horrified by his discovery, Collins Sr. erupted, shouting to anyone who would listen that the padding had been stripped from the gloves. "They've taken out all the padding," he yelled in disbelief and outrage. He quickly called for the fight commissioner to examine the gloves, demanding that justice be served. Resto, however, appeared unfazed by the accusations. He showed no sign of surprise or alarm and didn't attempt to explain himself. Instead, he glanced over to his corner where his trainer, the infamous Carlos Panama Lewis, stood watching nervously. It was as if Lewis had been caught red-handed. Despite the mounting evidence, both Resto and Lewis insisted they had done nothing wrong, claiming the gloves had been issued to them by the event organizers. Their attempts to brush off the accusations were met with skepticism, and when the referee for the evening, Tony Perez, intervened, the situation grew more intense. Perez led Resto and Lewis to the locker room for further investigation. After examining the gloves himself, Perez was convinced that foul play had occurred. The padding had been removed, turning the gloves into dangerous weapons. In a sport where every punch can have life-altering consequences, fighting with altered gloves not only provided Resto with a significant advantage, but it also put Collins' life at risk. The consequences were swift. The fight's result was declared null and void, and a criminal investigation was immediately launched. Within 2 weeks, the New York State Athletic Commission suspended Resto indefinitely. Carlos Panama Lewis, the mastermind behind the scandal, had his license revoked for life. For Resto, this signaled the end of his boxing career, but for others involved, the consequences were just beginning to unfold. Death, crime, and legal battles for Billy Collins Jr. The damage done that night was irreversible, both physically and emotionally. The savage beating he endured, delivered by a fighter wearing essentially unpadded gloves for nearly 30 minutes, left him with severe facial injuries. His eyes were grotesquely swollen, and worse still, the repeated blows caused a torn iris that forced Collins to retire from the sport prematurely. He had been on the verge of a promising career, but this injury meant he would never box again, lest he risk permanent blindness. The physical damage was devastating, but the emotional toll proved even more catastrophic. Collins spiraled into a deep depression, consumed by anger and a sense of betrayal. His once bright future dimmed, and he turned to alcohol to cope. His marriage fell apart, and he became estranged from his young daughter, losing everything that once brought him joy. Tragically, the pain became too much to bear. On March 7, 1984, less than a year after the fight, Collins died in a car crash at the age of 22. Whether the crash was an accident or the result of his spiraling despair remains unclear, but it marked a devastating end to a life full of promise. His father, Billy Collins Sr., was relentless in his pursuit of justice. He launched a series of lawsuits, targeting everyone he deemed responsible for his son's tragic fate. He sued Madison Square Garden, the fight organizers, the glove manufacturer, and even the New York Athletic Commission, arguing that they had all failed in their duty to protect his son. Yet despite his efforts, the lawsuits yielded little more than mounting legal fees, and he never received the compensation he had hoped for. His son's death left a wound that no amount of money could ever heal. Resto and Lewis on trial. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the scandal went far deeper than a single fighter's attempt to cheat his way to victory. In 1986, during the trial, new revelations came to light. It was revealed that Resto's gloves had been tampered with not just to give him an edge in the fight, but also to benefit a network of criminals who had placed substantial bets on the match. Before the fight, Panama Lewis had allegedly met with a drug dealer who stood to lose a significant amount of money if Resto lost. In exchange for ensuring Resto's victory, Lewis had agreed to remove the padding from his fighter's gloves, making them lighter and more dangerous. A re-examination of the gloves, the key piece of evidence, confirmed that nearly half the padding had been stripped away. Witnesses from that night pointed directly to Panama Lewis as the culprit, though he continued to deny any involvement in the scheme. Ultimately, both Resto and Lewis were found guilty of conspiracy to commit assault and criminal possession of a deadly weapon. In addition, Lewis faced a separate charge for tampering with a sporting event. Both men were sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. Resto, the aftermath, and a life of regret. Luis Resto was released from prison in 1988, but his life would never return to normal. Returning to the Bronx where he had grown up, Resto faced an uphill battle. He tried in vain to regain his boxing license, but the sport had turned its back on him. For 10 years, he lived in the basement of a gym, far removed from his family, battling substance abuse and struggling to find his place in the world. His story was chronicled in the 2008 documentary Assault in the Ring, directed by Eric Drath, which delved deep into the controversy and its aftermath. In the film, Resto, after years of denial, finally confessed to his role in the scandal. He revealed that Panama Lewis, along with another trainer, had taken the gloves to a bathroom before the fight, and when Resto asked what they were doing, he was simply told not to worry. Resto admitted that he had felt something was wrong with the gloves during the fight, but was instructed to keep going. The stakes were high, and there was too much money riding on his victory. He had heard whispers in the locker room about large bets being placed, and that his team had taken drastic measures to ensure he wouldn't lose. In a heartbreaking confession, Resto admitted that during the fight, as Collins refused to give up, he continued targeting his opponent's head, forgetting about the body. "I wanted to destroy him," Resto said, filled with regret, seeking redemption. In the years following his confession, Resto sought redemption. He visited Billy Collins Jr.'s grave, offering a sincere apology to the family he had wronged. Panama Lewis, meanwhile, maintained his innocence until his death at the age of 74. Though Lewis went on to train other fighters in Florida, the shadow of the scandal loomed over his career, overshadowing any of his other achievements. While the world of boxing remembered Lewis for his many successes, it was his role in the Resto Collins scandal that left the most lasting impression. For Luis Resto, the years of confession and regret eventually brought him some peace of mind. After countless attempts to regain his boxing license, the state of New York finally allowed him to step back into the ring as a cornerman, helping to train young fighters in the Bronx. Though he had found some measure of redemption, the memory of that fateful night in 1983 still haunted him. "I'll never forget it," he admitted. If you found this story compelling, make sure to check out other videos on our channel for more gripping tales from the world of boxing.